I'm Ray, and today I'm going to walk you through creating this multi-account savings tracker in Google Sheets. We'll start by creating a version for a single account and then expand it into this. I'll walk you through these formulae that are appearing on screen as we use them, and the compound interest formula that forms the basis of how your interest is calculated. So let's start with that. We use this formula to calculate the total amount that's in your account after interest is applied. We look at the principal amount, the initial amount that was in your account, look at the annual interest rate that's on your savings account. We look at the number of times interest is compounded per year. So if it's every day, then you're going to put 365, weekly 52, monthly 12. And then we'll look at the time period being reported on in years. So if we were looking at a whole year's worth of savings at once, then we would just use 1 for the T. If we were looking at 6 months, we'd use 0.5. In this particular calculator, we're going to look at monthly reporting. So we would use 1 over 12 or 0.08333. So let's add the interest rate into our spreadsheet. We'll put in that compounding frequency, that's N. And we'll put in the reporting period, so that's T. That's the length of time that the interest is compounded for. Now, because we also want to make this a regular savings account, we're going to add a field for regular payment. And we'll just put a nice border on this to make it look better in the spreadsheet. Okay, now let's create our main table. So we'll put a date field, paid in so far, interest earned so far, and account total. So let's make those bold and turn on text wrapping. Now looking in the date field, we'll start with this month, so November 2025. Then we're going to use the eDate formula to progress that by 1 month at a time. So we put in eDate, we put our start date, and we can just click on the cell that we've put the first month in, and then we put a number 1 in the second variable place. And now what we want to do is just change the formatting on these cells so that we get the same date format in all of the cells. So we go to format number, we'll put a custom date and time. And in this case, we'll just select the one that says month, year and apply. We can now select the cell that's got the eDate formula in and drag it down for as many months as we want our savings to compound for. So in this case, I'll go from November 2025 to October 2026. Then let's start putting in some of these variables. So we're going to have an interest rate, which is a percentage. We're going to set our regular payment to be currency. We can now put in an amount into our regular payment field. And let's say that we want our compounding frequency to be daily. So we'll put 365. And our reporting period we want to be monthly, so we're going to set that as equal to 1 over 12. And let's say that we've got a pretty average savings account with 5% interest. For all of these remaining columns within the table, we want the format to be currency, so let's go and set that. We'll go to format number and select currency. We can now put the paid in so far as equal, well, we might start with a set amount. And then we can just say for each month after that, we're going to take that amount above and we're going to add our regular payment. If we drag this down though, we can see it doesn't work the way we expected. We're not adding 250 to that 350. And what we can see is the purple square, that regular payment, has pulled down where Google Sheets has tried to be helpful. So we need to use the $sign to say, no, I want this cell to be fixed. Don't change it when I drag it down the page. And now we can see it's always looking at that cell F5. And we can drag that down and see the regular payments that are going to get put into this account. We'll skip the interest one for now. We're going to go to the account total, and this is where we're going to use our compound interest formula. So we're going to put our principal or initial amount, in this case to be what was paid in on the opening of the account. We then multiply that by 1 plus, and then if you look at the formula up in the top right, you can see we need to get R over N. So R is our interest rate, and N is our compounding frequency. So we need F2 over F3. We then need to close those brackets and close it so we've got all of that 1 plus in the same bracket, and now we need to raise it to the power of NT, and we use the little hat symbol in Google Sheets to manage that. In this case we want N times T, so that's F3 times F4. And we can close those brackets. Before we drag this down the page, we just need to make sure that we're using that $ again to freeze these cells and say these are fixed cells, they're never going to change no matter where on the page we're looking. So we'll just fix in all of those. And then it offers, do you want to drag this down the whole page and fill this column? In this case we don't, because we want to change our principal amount for the rest of it. So now the principal amount, the amount we start with, is whatever was in the account at the end of the last month. And we come away from that. But if we look and we see we're dragging it down the page here, what we're actually getting is what would the amount in the account be if that interest just kept compounding month after month and we didn't add any extra money in. So what we need to do now is go into that cell in D9 and just say, okay, we're going to add to our principal amount each month as well. So our principal amount isn't just the previous month's account total, but it's that plus our regular payment. If we drag it down, we can see, oh, it's not worked how we expected it to, because we need to go back in and remember those $signs. So we go in here and we stick those $signs around the F5 just to say, hey, that cell's never going to change. Our regular payment will always be in that cell. So now when we drag it down, we'll see how that account total increases over time. And now if we want to look at how much interest we've earned month on month, we'll just take that account total and subtract the amount we've paid in so far. And in this case, we can accept the autofill suggestion because we're going to do that all the way down the page. And you can see if we click in a few of these cells and have a look down, it's moving the cells that it's referring to as it's gone down the column. Okay, so now we want to add another little table over to the right hand side, but I just want to get a little bit more space so it's easier to read. So we're just going to stick another column in to the right hand side. We'll just turn this selection of data over here into a table just to make it look a little bit nicer. And now we're going to add some data over here. So we want to look at what's the total amount that we've saved and what's the amount we've paid in. And we're going to use this to create a scorecard chart in a minute. So to look at the total amount saved, we're going to use the index because it's going to pull the value from a particular column. And we're going to say, hey, you're going to pull a value from somewhere in this D column. And to tell it which row we're looking at, we're going to use count A. We're going to say in that same range, count how many rows have got a value in them. And it's when it comes back and tells you how many rows have got a value, that then tells the index formula to pull out the last row with a value in it. We're going to do the same for amount paid in. So again, we're going to say, use the index formula to say, hey, you're going to pull a value from this column B. And then we're going to use count A to tell it the row number. And we're going to use that same range. So count all of the values in that range and pull out that row number that's got the last value in it. We can then just put some borders on this again to make it look a little bit nicer in our sheet. And we're going to use this data that we've just made here to put together a scorecard. So we go to Insert and we select Chart, and it'll automatically come up with a pie chart. But if we scroll to the bottom, we'll get a scorecard chart. So then we get this total saved scorecard chart. And we're going to select that we want to switch the rows and the columns. And then we're going to select that we want to use column F as headers. So you'll see those values have now changed to show total saved and amount paid in are our key value and our baseline value. So we can now go and customize this. We'll stick a nice chart title on that just says savings account total. And we'll go to our baseline value and say we want to keep it as an absolute change, but what it's actually showing is the interest earned. Because the number that's displayed is the difference between your key value and your baseline value. And we'll just make it green so that it matches the number, the fact that we're happy we've earned some interest. Well, if we change the amount paid in, we can see how that changes the savings, but what we're going to do is I'm just going to fix that to the regular payment. And we'll just hit X on that autofill suggestion. And if we play around with some of these values in our compound interest formula, we can see how we're going to get a different amount. If I change the interest amount to 7%, we can see how that affects our interest earned. Conversely, if I change it down to 4.5%, we can see how that decreases the amount of interest earned. We can change the compounding frequency. So if the bank wasn't calculating our interest daily and using that to compound and earn more interest, then we could see what that would look like. So let's try if they only compounded it monthly. You can see that would result in a slight decrease in the amount of interest earned. But we'll go back to compounding daily for the purpose of this calculator. Okay, so now we're going to work on building a multi-account. So we've got one account and we can see the interest and that we've earned on this account. But let's look at if we had multiple savings accounts. So we're putting our money in a few different places. How much interest would we earn? So I've just duplicated this sheet. That's why you saw the table number change to 1-2. And then I'm going to select some of these columns and just insert some columns. And I'm just going to copy cells E, F and G and paste them into B, C and D. I'm going to put in another 6 columns to the left. And again, copy that information in. Now don't worry too much about these errors that are coming up at the moment because we're going to refer them to some data in a minute and then it'll all work. So if we look at column P and we'll say, okay, that's the stuff we've got for account 1 and we'll copy this across to make accounts 2 and 3. And actually I'll just drag account 1 across because then it will automatically update to 2 and 3 for me. So we'll be able to change those numbers in there later. So what we want to look at now is saying, okay, well, I want this first set of columns, so B, C, D, it's going to be account 1. And I just need to change that fixed reference. So we had a fixed reference of J, and that's going to become P. And hit enter, and I can drag that down the page, and it will update all of them. You can do the same thing for account 2. We're going to say that's Q5. And when we go down to the next row, we don't want to autofill, we just want to change that J to be a Q. And we can hit enter and we can drag that down the page. And you can see if I change the value in account 2, that's changed those values in column E. And then for account 3, we need to set it to be R. And we just want to change that P again to be an R. And we'll drag this down the page and we can see all that's updated. And again, if I change the value in here for account 3, we'll see that we get those different numbers coming into column H. Right, let's move on then to changing those account totals. So we had all of the J's, which were the old fixed ones. We need to move them to be P. So that's it, just changing all of those J's to become P's. And we can hit enter. And I need to do the same again on the second row because I can't drag it down on the account total. So again, I just want to go in and change all of those J's to be P's. And now once I've done that for that one, I can just drag that one down the page and it will update. So now we've got all of the information for the first account. We're going to do the same thing now for the second account, but this time all the J's are going to get changed to be Q. So we just go through and change all these J's quickly into Q's. And hit enter. And we do the same thing on the next row down. So just changing all those J's to be Q's. And I can drag that down the page now. And we'll go and do that again for the last account. So we'll go and update the account total for column J. And we just want to update this to be everything that they've written. In this case, it's got P's in there. We just need to update that to be account 3. So we need to make those P's into R's. And again, the same on the second row. So we're just going to change all those P's into R's to make sure we're referring to the correct data for the correct account. And we can then drag that down the page. So now we've got all of the information for all of our accounts, and now we want to put in those totals. So for that we can just put is equal to, and then just click on the ones that we're going to add together. So we'll click in on all of the paid in so fars, hit enter. Now we don't want to lock these because actually if we drag it across, it'll be very helpful and just change those references for us. And we can just change the borders on this just to pretty it up a bit. And we can just add some borders around some of these other accounts so that we can see the separation between them. And we can see this table over here with the total saved and the amount paid in is still referring to the correct columns. And that's because we used those insert columns left when we were building this multi one. So let's just add some colours to these so that we can see easily all the different accounts that we've got. Okay, I want to change the month that I start saving in for this first account. So I'm just going to use the $sign to fix that reference point from cell B8 and move that down to cell B11. So I start saving in February. I'm just going to drag this table down a little bit so that I can see a few more months. And in this case, in account 1, I want to say, well, that was actually only an annual saver. So once we got to February, we stopped putting any more money into it. Then for account 2, I'm going to say it's the same thing. It was an annual saver. It started up in November. And then I want to do the same for account 3. I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to have that start at a different time. We'll maybe start this one in July. And you can see I forgot to fix the cell reference in H8, so I just need to go and fix that, and we'll copy it down again. So we'll copy that cell down. We've got that fixed reference. We can get rid of all that information up at the top. But now what you can see, if we look at the account total, is actually the amount I've got saved looks like it's decreasing when actually I've just stopped saving extra money. So what we need to do is use the if statement to give a little bit more information to this column and be like, okay, if that cell is not empty, then great, take the value from that cell. Otherwise, we're going to use max, and we're going to take the maximum value between that first B8 cell and whichever row we're in. So we'll fix the $8, and then we'll tell it to go as far as, now we're going to say B8 again, but when we drag it down, that second B8 will update, and we'll see what that looks like in a minute. Okay, so we're going to do that for all of the cells that this formula is looking at. So we'll go to the second one along, and we're going to say, okay, well, if E8 is not blank, then you're going to refer to E8. Otherwise, you want to take the maximum value from the range that starts at E8 and goes down as far as whatever row we're in. And we do the same again for the column H. So again, we put if, and we're looking for if H8 is not blank. So that's where we just put open and closed quotations. We're going to use the H8 value. If it is blank, we're going to take the maximum value from the start of that column, so from the start of that data, which is at H8, until whichever row we're currently on. So the first time we fill out the formula, we put H8, but when we drag it down, it will change what it's looking at. So I'm just going to drag this down that page, and you can see it's updated the paid in so far to be accurate. And you can see if I double click on this, that formula where we started with B8 is now referring all the way down to whichever row we're on. So in this case, it's going down to row 25. And it's just looking for that maximum value in that row. So if we drag that all the way along and we copy it down, we can now see we're pulling that information from across the table. And we'll just clear these borders, because obviously with our copying and moving things about, it all just went a bit wonky. So we'll just remove those. And there we go. We have a multi-account savings account that tracks our interest. If we change the information in some of these accounts, so if I change the interest rate on account 2 to 7%, you can see it's made a change to the amount of interest earned. And same if I change account 3 to 3.5%, we get the same thing. If I change that initial payment amount, that regular payment amount again in the account, it changes the amount that we've saved and the amount of interest earned. If you like this video or you found it useful and you'd like to know when I release the next Google Sheets calculator, which will be a loan calculator, then hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time. Thank you.